They said, I don't know if Islam makes sense to me anymore. And my question on that statement, and I'm pretty sure it was a young person, is the onus on that young person to make sense of Islam, or is it the responsibility of us to make sense of Islam for the young people? So I want you guys to reflect on that, because that really touched me, and I gave that card to Imam Umar. There's a question here, and I'm going to answer this question, and it's going to make people feel uncomfortable in this room, but I would rather answer this question than for people to leave here misinterpreting or trying to interpret for themselves. So their question is, there are some minority groups that their demands may be in contradiction with the beliefs of Muslims, such as LGBTQ rights. And for people who don't know what that is, that means gay rights. What do you suggest as the right action that we should take in the matter of civil rights? So this is a big question, right? It's a big question that comes up on college campuses. It comes up in a lot of the conversations when we talk about how Muslims are minorities. Sisters and brothers, we do not have to compromise our Islamic values. We do not have to compromise the teachings of our deen. We do not have to compromise what it says in the Quran to understand one very important concept. Our deen, all people are created by Allah. And as Muslims, we believe that nobody should be killed, targeted, harassed, regardless of their religion or perceived religion, their race, their ethnicity, or any other part of their identity. So if we hear of a person that was killed because someone thought they were gay, or maybe they are gay, that is not right in Islam. We do not support the killing, harassing, or targeting of anyone. That's number one. Number two, I'll give you an example. In many states around the country, we have passed anti-bullying legislation because Muslim children across this country are being bullied. But there are also young people who are being bullied for being LGBTQ, or because someone thinks that they're LGBTQ. So in these anti-bullying legislation, you may have seen Muslims, right, and people from the LGBTQ community standing together. This is an issue of civil rights and safety of all Americans and all American children in the United States. There is nobody compromising Islamic values by standing up for all children or all people and saying that people deserve to live in safety with dignity and respect. So this is a misconception in the Muslim community when we talk about LGBTQ rights. Now, people will say, but what about same-sex marriage, Sister Linda? Let me tell you something about same-sex marriage. I never seen a Muslim in this country in a rally supporting same-sex marriage. I don't think any Muslims were ever invited to go support, because many people already understand what Islam says about that particular concept. But I also didn't see any imams or any national Muslim organizations speaking out against same-sex marriage. Why? Because in this country, marriage is not a religious right, it is a civil right. So we have to, as Muslims, distinguish religion from civil rights. So I hope that clarifies to you how we, as Muslims, come to these conversations, not from a place of compromising deen, but understanding that we live in a nation that is a democracy, and that all people who live here, we don't have to agree with them, or we don't have to agree with who they are or their choices, but we should agree that they deserve to live with safety and dignity and have the same civil rights as all Americans. So that's that question. So someone's asking this important question about how do I, the question is for me, reconcile values of humanities with the teachings of conservatism. It depends on who's defining what that is. What the person means is, how can I be a woman, a mother, have children, have a career? This has nothing to do with conservatism or traditionalism or modernism, right? We have to understand that we cannot allow people to tell us that Islam is not a modern religion, that we have to make Islam more moderate. We have many examples in our deen of very strong businesswomen, working women, educated women, scholars of Islam who were women, right? And they were also oftentimes mothers too. How do I do it? I have created a support network for myself. Parents, communities, sisters, people who have helped me take care of my children. Alhamdulillah, I have 3 children, 17, 15, and 12 years old. Being able to have strong families, looking after our families, and understanding that if you are to be in the role that I am in, which any mother can be in the role that I am in, that we understand that what we are doing is for the betterment of our own children first and foremost, and the betterment of all people. So don't distinguish being Muslim, right, from another woman who may be Christian or Jewish or atheist, that they do it because their religion gives them more space. Our deen also gives us more space. It is Muslims that don't give us space, but our deen gives us space to be career women, to be educated, to be articulate, and to be working on behalf of our communities. I said this in my speech earlier, and this is a lot. I'm skipping some because some of them are the same question. This is a sister. She said, I am 20 years old, and I have grown up in the United States most of my life. I want to be able to convince my parents that this is our duty. How do I do that? And she says, P.S., they are strict Arabs, is what she says about her parents. Sisters and brothers, I hope that if your parents are in this room, and I hope that if you are parents in this room, that you understand that our children, many of whom have grown up in a post-9/11 America. So my children, for example, are 17 years old. So when 9/11 happened, my son was 2, my daughter was 1, and my other daughter was not yet born. So many of the children in this room who are 20 and younger only grew up in a country that tells them you don't belong here. Your Islam is a foreign entity. Go back to your country. We don't love you here. You can't be American and be Muslim. And our children are hearing about all the events happening around the world, and they're trying to process and reconcile what is happening. Our children are experiencing great trauma. So what you can do for them as parents is, if you have children who have some eloquence, you have children who have some passion and some energy, the best thing that you can do for children to help them reconcile the world that they live in is by encouraging them to be part of the solution. It is also by encouraging them to be unapologetically Muslim. Is to allow them to pursue degrees that are beyond degrees in medicine and degrees in engineering and law. Allow them to be journalists. We need more Muslims in the media. We need more Muslims telling our stories. I need social workers. I want more mental health professionals. I want more psychiatrists in our community. So give your children, allow them to explore their potential. Have those conversations with them. Allow them to tell you why they believe that Black Lives Matter. Allow them to tell you why your Pakistani daughter wants to be the president of the Students for Justice in Palestine, which, by the way, many of the Students for Justice in Palestine chapters are led by young brown sisters across the country. This idea that we tell our children to not engage actually hinders the future of the Muslim community. If we silence this generation, we are to blame when there are generations that come after them that are afraid to stand up for justice for our own communities, and those who are going to be afraid to say that they are Muslim. So remember that your children want to be part of that story 100 years from now, that it is going to be led by the young people in our communities, and those young people are our children. So if you are a young person in this community, I want you to tell your parents this, that you want to be an activist because you want to follow in the seerah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that being an activist is your duty as a Muslim to stand up for justice and against injustice. And believe it or not, and I'm not encouraging this, and I want you to do it with all respect, that in our deen it tells us that you should stand up against injustice even if it is against your parents, because sometimes our parents are not straight. And of course you do that with love and compassion for your parents and with respect, but sometimes we have to have these important conversations even with our parents. So that's the question that I have here.
Sister, we have a question here.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair, Sister Linda, for all of these gems that you've been spitting tonight. And so my question really pertains to the relationship the Muslim community should be having with the police. And so kind of where I am standing from, my vantage point, especially when it comes to the police, these other organizations, FBI, CIA, I see a lot of the damage that they have done to our communities directly, with whether it's surveillance or even the killing of our black brothers and sisters. Nevertheless, I still see that there could be that necessary connection that should be forged. So do you mind talking a little bit about this?
So the sister just wants me to be spicy, as if I already wasn't spicy. So I'm an outsider, and I'm not going to make any judgments on any communities and the choices that you make as a community. So I'm going to give my own personal perspective. And I ask of you, my dear sisters and brothers, to forgive me if anyone is offended by anything that I have to say, because I am saying it with love. We in the Muslim community have to drop what Imam Umar called respectability politics. And when we as communities engage with law enforcement, that's cool, you do that, that's fine. Bring the police, have those meetings, do that. But if you are engaging with law enforcement and trying to build relationship with law enforcement, but you're not holding law enforcement accountable when they are killing your dear American sisters and brothers on the streets of your communities, that is called cowardice, and it is called hypocritical. And it actually says about our community that we have absolutely no integrity. When we hear, I'm not talking about other cities, I'm talking about in Dallas and in Houston, when people are killed, when law enforcement is engaging in practices of broken windows policing, when they're engaging in stopping and frisking of Latino and black sisters and brothers, and we as Muslims choose to have dinner with police, but nobody ever held the police accountable or stood up in public and said what you are doing is wrong. Because even if the police are your friends, they deserve to hear truth from you. In New York City, we have Muslims who engage with the New York Police Department. There are many New York police officers who go outside of their homes every day to risk their lives to protect New Yorkers. Nobody will take that away from police officers, right? Because not all police officers are bad people, and I don't even think we have to defend that. But we also know that the New York Police Department engages in unwarranted surveillance and spying on Muslim communities. So in one breath, I can build relationship with law enforcement. I'll sit in the meeting with the police commissioner, but I also sat in a meeting with the police commissioner and said that your spying on the Muslim community is unconstitutional, and guess what the Muslim community is going to do? We're going to sue the New York Police Department. So the New York Muslim community sued the New York Police Department in 3 separate lawsuits, ensuring that they knew that we will not stand for the civil rights of our communities to be violated. Not only did we sue the New York Police Department, but we worked in a campaign with blacks and Latinos and other communities, and we created the first independent oversight over the New York Police Department. Our police department, sisters and brothers, got to follow the law. And when we say you got to stand up against injustice, right? Even if it's against your own or people that you think are your friends, sometimes you're going to have to tell your friends, what are you doing? What do you have to say about officers in your police departments who are killing unarmed people? So these are the kind of things that I mean when I say our young people are watching us. So we have to make sure that every interaction that we have, that our children are understanding that, wait a minute, mashallah, our leaders are building relationship with law enforcement, but guess what they do on Friday? They also hold law enforcement accountable. So I know it's Salah time, but I just wanted to say that we want to make sure that we are just in the way that we organize. We are just in the way that we build relationships. And sometimes we're going to have to make sure that every action that we take is rooted in dignity, integrity, and respect of all people, ensuring that justice is at the core of how we interact with all government and all government officials.